Coming up, the war that changed the world. We'll take a look at the heroes who won the battle.
Jews waited thousands of years for this moment.
And get an exclusive look at the new documentary, In Our Hands, The Battle for Jerusalem.
Jerusalem is yours, forever.
Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Let's go over to the CBN News Desk for today's top headlines.
Gordon, French authorities are investigating the deadly terrorist attack in the Champs-Élysées shopping district, and the brutal assault could have a political impact on Sunday's French elections. Charlene Aaron has this story.
The attack happened just after 9 p.m. in the heart of Paris. A gunman armed with military-style weapons walked up to a police van and opened fire.
I saw three guys coming in a Greece Audi and shoot on the police and kill one of the police and injure one. Then I have to run away. I was here walking in the Champs-Élysées.
The gunman killed one police officer and seriously wounded 2 other officers before other police killed him. A woman tourist was also injured. ISIS claims responsibility and may have been directly involved rather than just inspiring the attack. French authorities say the suspect was reportedly detained in February for threatening police, then freed. Police searched his home in eastern Paris overnight. President Trump condemned the attack.
Our condolences from our country to the people of France. It looks like another terrorist attack, and what can you say?
The attack comes just days before the first round of the French elections on Sunday. Some think it might help the far-right candidate Marine Le Pen, who has taken a hard line on immigration issues and terrorism. The attack shows the ongoing threat in France and elsewhere in Europe, and it could lead to growing public pressure on governments to stop Islamic terrorism. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
The Christian governor of Jakarta is free from charges of blasphemy against the Quran. At a court appearance Thursday, Indonesian prosecutors decided to end their trial against Basuki Purnama, also known as Ahok. The decision came just a few days after he lost his re-election bid against the former Minister of Education. If he had been convicted, he could have served up to 5 years in prison. Armenians around the world will soon pause to remember family lost to genocide, many of them Christians. The 102-year-old catastrophe is an often forgotten story in Turkey's history, but it's the inspiration for a fictional film in theaters today. I sat down with the stars for this look at The Promise.
I have to go.
Mikhail.
I have to find them.
Mikhail, leave these people alone. You're safe in the woods.
No, I'm not safe. No one here is safe.
In The Promise, Oscar Isaac plays an Armenian desperate to save his family from being rounded up and killed.
The legendary Chris Myers.
Emery Ogun.
Christian Bale portrays an American journalist documenting the atrocities. Still, there is a love story.
You read this script and you get to the end. How would you describe the story? Heartbreaking? How do you describe it?
It's a heartbreaking story of survival. It attempts to show this very human story set inside a very tragic time, which is the Armenian genocide at the turn of the century, 1915, where 1.5 million Armenians perished.
This is described as one of the greatest and least known catastrophes of the 20th century. Any thoughts on why?
You were getting the crumbling of the Ottoman Empire and the birth of the Turkish nation. There was great Turkish nationalism at that time. And then the lack of consequences, and hence the lack of knowledge about it. Of course, it's uncomfortable to admit that the birth of a nation came from the pains of the extermination of an entire race.
What's the ultimate promise in The Promise?
Well, there's a promise that the character of Mikhail has towards the woman he's betrothed to, that he will return. But I think overall there's a promise that never to forget by the filmmakers, by Armenians in general, by anybody who has lost somebody.
And those are today's top stories from CBN News. Now let's go back over to Terry.
Coming up, the moment Jews had been waiting for thousands of years. the prayer and the hope of many generations. Next year in Jerusalem.
Suddenly it becomes this year in Jerusalem.
Hear how Israeli paratroopers recaptured the Temple Mount. That's next.
Well, less than 20 years after reforming as a nation, Israel was on the verge of extinction. The city of Jerusalem was divided, and some holy sites, such as the Temple Mount, were under Arab control. But that all changed over the course of 6 fateful days in 1967. Scott Ross talked with the author of a book on the battle that reunited Jerusalem and how the heroes of that war went on to shape modern Israel.
The Temple Mount is in our hands. The famous words of Commander Mota Gur, whose men helped reunite Jerusalem under Jewish sovereignty, fulfilling a 2,000-year-old dream.
This book is really a story of an Israeli band of brothers, young Israeli men who gave the Jewish people their greatest victory, I would say, in history. Right. Probably since the Exodus from Egypt. You know, suddenly we're born again as a people.
I spoke with American-born Israeli Yossi Klein Halevi about his book, Like Dreamers, the story of the Israeli paratroopers who reunited Jerusalem and divided a nation. Psalm 126, when God brings about the return to Zion, we were like dreamers. Then our mouths will be filled with laughter, our tongues with joyous song. And that's where you got the title. Halevi took me to the Mount of Olives overlooking the old city where Mota Gur commanded his troops.
The paratroopers came to this spot on the morning of June 7th, 1967. Mota Gur, a very famous photograph, is looking out onto the Temple Mount and making the final preparations in his mind for the descent and the conquest of the old city. So he says, paratroopers of Brigade 55. And he tells them that Jews waited thousands of years for this moment. You are the ones who are privileged to restore Jerusalem to the Jewish people.
We retraced their steps to Lion's Gate of the old city.
This is the gate that the paratroopers, the Israeli soldiers, entered on June 7th, 1967. And then when they reached the Temple Mount, the famous words of Mota Gur, the commander of the paratroopers, were, the Temple Mount is in our hands. And they find the wall, and there are these incredibly emotional scenes of battle-hardened paratroopers, many of them secular, most of them secular, weeping at the wall.
So the prayer and the hope of many generations next year in Jerusalem came to pass.
Suddenly it becomes this year in Jerusalem.
Halevi personalizes the history of Israel since then through the eyes of 6 such dreamers.
I felt that what was missing in the way people relate to the story of Israel was that personal connection. Right. And I always wondered, you know, what happened to the guys who liberated the Western Wall in 1967? I grew up with that image as symbolizing the like dreamers story of Israel.
These paratroopers, do they really reflect and microcosm the story of this country?
The range that you have in this book are deeply religious people, West Bank settlers, secular Israelis, Tel Aviv residents, kibbutzniks, left-wingers. And it was very important for me to tell the story of the whole people of Israel. Because the way that I understand the Jewish people is that we're a family.
It took Halevi 12 of his 32 years in Israel to write the book.
One of my characters, Arik Achmon, starts off as a boy living on one of these socialist, radical socialist kibbutzim. He fights the trade unions, and he creates the first privatized company in the state of Israel and opens the way to the high-tech free economy that we have today.
One became known as Israel's Bob Dylan, and another started the settlement movement in Judea and Samaria. Halevi says his book tries to show the struggle within the Israeli soul over making peace with the Palestinians and dividing Jerusalem.
In my neighborhood, I've got Jewish neighbors, I've got Arab neighbors in the same neighborhood, in the same building. Now, how do you separate that? How do you divide a city without, God forbid, destroying it? I don't see how Jerusalem can be shared between two political entities that are emerging out of a 100-year war.
And for people from my worldview and my Christian view, we take very seriously the psalmist when he says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you.
Yes.
As you sit here and as we look at this, how do you pray for this city?
I pray that I personally should be worthy of living here, of holding this story at this moment. I pray that the people of Israel will be worthy of this story. I pray for our strength. I pray for our generosity of spirit. I pray that we be protected from hatred, that our hearts be open to love all the people of this land and all those who turn toward the city with hope. And I pray for all of us, and that's my prayer.
And that is a wonderful prayer. Let me add something to that passage from Psalm 126, and it's the very next verse. Then they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. And it is a miracle. We need to look at Israel, the modern state of Israel, as an answer to the question, can a nation be born in a day? And that day happened in 1948. And then all the prophecies of the reunification of Jerusalem, where Jesus said it clearly, Jerusalem will no longer be trodden under the foot of the Gentiles, won't be controlled by the Gentiles. Well, that happened, and it happened in my lifetime in 1967. So let's say the Lord has done great things for them.
Yeah, it was quite an amazing victory. And I don't know if you're not Jewish and you don't understand the significance of the wall, that maybe you can grasp what that meant to people who had waited so long to go back, to be back.
It is. It's an enormous thing that for thousands of years, they were praying next year in Jerusalem. Every Passover, every Seder service, next year in Jerusalem. Well, next year now, in 67 became, well, this year. And what an incredible victory, an incredible thing that happened literally in a week.
Yeah. May we all remember.
Yes.
May we all remember. Well, up next, watch for the fight for the city of David play out on the big screen. Get a sneak peek at CBN's newest docudrama, In Our Hands, The Battle for Jerusalem, when we come back.
Well, this spring marks the 50th anniversary of the Six-Day War. To commemorate this historic event, CBN is releasing a brand new documentary called In Our Hands, The Battle for Jerusalem. It tells the story of Israel's defense forces and how they risked everything for the sake of their homeland. Here's a look at the trailer.
The time has come to begin a battle of annihilation.
Our goal is clear.
To wipe Israel off the map.
We shall destroy Israel and its inhabitants.
I just started this job 10 months ago. Now you want me to plan an entire war in 2 days?
Yes. Take the old city and be done with it.
No more bloodshed.
We should go in now. And what is your great strategy for that?
To be right here, Mota, and not to go in. History will never forgive you.
Jerusalem has never been conquered from the east. Not since King David's time.
So it will be the second time. And the last one.
Enter the old city immediately and capture it. 55th Paratrooper Brigade, move toward the Lion's Gate.
It was a merciless battle, but you didn't complain. For you, it was enough to drive forward and to conquer. Jerusalem is yours forever.
Well, In Our Hands, the battle for Jerusalem will be shown in theaters in a one-night-only Fathom event. That night is Tuesday, May 23rd at 7 p.m. Now, the significance of that, May 23 is Jerusalem Reunification Day on the Jewish calendar, and that's why we've picked that. And if you want to get tickets for it, they're on sale right now. You can buy the ticket and see which theaters are hosting this event in your area by just going to this website, inourhands1967.com. Now, group sales are available, so you can bring members of your church, school, synagogue to this special event. And let me encourage you to go. If you're looking at today's headlines, you're looking at how Donald Trump made a promise that finally we're going to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. If you see the resolution that was passed by the UN on the eve of Hanukkah this past December saying that Israel's occupation of East Jerusalem was blatantly illegal, if you're seeing these headlines, this movie will tell you the history of how all of this came to be. So that's why we're putting it out to movies in movie theaters. We want as many people as possible to see it so they can understand the story. If you're younger than 50 years old, you weren't around when the battle happened, and you need to get educated in order to understand the current events in the world today. And if you're a Christian, realize this: the Temple Mount is part of East Jerusalem, but so is the Garden of Gethsemane. So is the Mount of Olives. So is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And we've already seen what happens to Christian sites. Bethlehem. What happens to Bethlehem when the Palestinians gain control of it? Well, it means Christians aren't safe going there anymore. So if you want to keep these sites open for Christians, for Muslims, for Jews, for all people, Israel over the past 50 years has proven their stewardship of Jerusalem, and we need to support them.
You know, you mentioned earlier that this all happened in your lifetime, and I think for a believer also to sit down with the Bible before them and see the hand of God moving so prophetically
Prophecy
in our day.
fulfilled.
Whew, it's powerful.
It is proof that prophecies in the Bible get fulfilled. It's the singular proof in my lifetime.
Yeah, you want to see it. In Our Hands, The Battle for Jerusalem is one of CBN's largest productions to date. We worked with nearly 250 actors and extras, including actual Israeli paratroopers. Every line of dialogue comes from records or diaries and interviews, and many of the battles were actually filmed in their exact locations. Ephraim Graham sat down with some of the members of the cast and crew to see how they made this epic film.
We shall destroy Israel and its inhabitant.
Arab nations surrounded Israel in 1967 with a battle plan.
Our goal is clear: to wipe Israel off the map.
That outmanned and outgunned the young country.
The Syrian army, with its finger on the trigger, is united. I believe the time has come to begin a battle of annihilation.
The Jewish nation's survival hinged on a war that would last only 6 days. Those days are relived in the film In Our Hands, The Battle for Jerusalem, through the compelling stories of Israeli paratroopers.
If you leave here, you won't be coming back.
But if I don't leave, none of you will be coming back.
Production for In Our Hands took just under a year to complete, and one of the most pivotal battle scenes was shot right here at Ammunition Hill.
We did the shooting on this Jeep right here. This was actually originally Motagur's Jeep, the character played by Sharon.
On location at Ammunition Hill, we talked with actors Idan Barkai and Sharon Friedman.
My grandfather, Aaron, was in the siege on Jerusalem before, And he was telling about it to me when I was young. And it was like, you know, it's like unbelievable that I'm playing like the one that, you know, released the city and take it back, which is the place that my grandfather used to be here, like, you know, unprotected.
Sharon plays 55th Brigade Commander Motagur. Idan plays Chief Intelligence Officer Arik Akman.
You want me to plan an entire war in 2 days? Yes? I'm at the university full time. I'm about to take my final exam. So, you'd better get to work.
Both of these gentlemen, very impressive in terms of their lives and they're real life people.
Yeah.
Were you nervous about portraying people who people celebrate and are heroes?
You feel obligated to honor that person, but it's just Arik Akman is such a great person. I was humbled, you know. I just tried to do my best. Tried to give out the emotion and the tension of the moment I was in. Me, myself, I served the army, but I never really fought in big, great wars, fortunately.
This film hits close to home for many cast members.
I myself was in the army, in the paratroopers, so I could give my input to the part and the movie, but it was more real than just a memory of the Israel history.
Ishai Ben Moshe plays 71st Battalion Commander Yoram Zamosh.
Did you learn anything new about the Six-Day War while filming this?
The movie showed me that it's not like we learned in the school. When you learn it, you know all the dates and what happened, but you don't live it.
Were there any scenes that were difficult for you, or the most memorable scene for you? What was it?
The most memorable was with the actress Ruth Farhi, who plays the woman that gives me the flag of Israel to put on the wall. It was a very emotional scene.
I brought you a flag. This flag flew in the old city before we left in 1948. When you get to the wall, I want you to hang this flag.
Of course. It will be our honor.
Action! Guiding these emotional scenes, producer and director Aaron Zimmerman.
There are so many amazing human stories. I didn't want to do a dry documentary, you know, where you have old footage and you're saying, well, this regiment moved here and this regiment moved here.
Of course, this being a film about war, there's a lot of darkness in it. But I felt like there's also a lot of light in the film as well. Is my assessment correct, and was that intentional?
It was intentional to end on a high note, but it was also my intention not to give an empty, hey, yay, war, we won, because there was so many casualties. Absolutely. And there were so many injuries and people who, both mentally and physically, were never the same after that war.
Tell me who. Giora Ashkenazi, Yair Goldberg, Zaki David, Yoav Tsuri.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News, Jerusalem.
This was a powerful moment in time, and you have an opportunity to see the making of this film, the final product of this that recounts all that happened at that moment in history. One night, May 23rd, you don't want to miss it. InOurHands1967.com is where you can go to find out the times and locations in a theater near you. Be sure you take advantage of the opportunity to see this. InOurHands1967.com. Well, still ahead, see why Christians should support Israel and why that small country has been hailed as the inventors of our future.
And what's coming down the pike is going to be even more intense.
See how Israeli technology has built our modern world when we return.
And welcome back to the 700 Club. This weekend marks Holocaust Remembrance Day, and while the world remembers this historic tragedy, many Holocaust survivors are living their final years in terrible poverty. This Facebook video shows the story of one such survivor, Olga, who was hunted by Nazis during World War II. Now she lives alone in the Ukrainian countryside, freezing and starving with very little to eat. You can see this video and learn what's being done to help Holocaust survivors who are living in such poverty by going to cbnnews.com. Thanks to Operation Blessing, the first business just opened in Karakosh, Iraq, after it was recently liberated from ISIS. ISIS destroyed many businesses during its occupation of the city, but one baker surprisingly found his business still standing when he returned. Operation Blessing has been donating new equipment so he can start baking bread for the returning Iraqis. And on Easter, the bakery staff was able to make bread in the shape of crosses for their community. Operation Blessing has also pledged to help members of this community get back on their feet in the upcoming months with more business initiatives. You can learn more about Operation Blessing by going to its website, that is ob.org. Gordon and Terry are back with much more of the 700 Club right after this.
The entire state of Israel is roughly the size of New Jersey. And yet it has the largest number of startup companies per capita in the world, and more companies listed on the NASDAQ exchange than all of Europe. So what's the secret to Israel's high-tech success? Well, we asked some of its top business leaders, and here's what they had to say. On April 15, 2013, 2 bombs exploded during the Boston Marathon, killing 3 people and injuring 264 others. For the next 3 days, investigators reportedly used a high-tech system called BriefCam to analyze local surveillance video. Hours of video are condensed into minutes, and experts can zoom in on suspicious actions, like a backpack being left behind. BriefCam's video synopsis was instrumental in identifying the 2 bombers, and the technology was made in Israel.
Technology is going to change all of our lives. It already has, and what's coming down the pike is going to be even more intense.
Israel has often been called the startup nation. And while Jerusalem may be the spiritual heart of the country, Tel Aviv is the center of its startup success. Just a century ago, this thriving city was little more than a series of sand dunes. Today, it's been voted the second best high-tech center in the world, just after Silicon Valley. Israel was recently ranked the 4th most innovative nation in the world, from the iPhone to the PlayStation. Many of the ideas behind your favorite gadgets came from inventors right here in Israel. Flip-top cell phones, keyboards for smartphones, Intel Pentium chips, the ability to print straight from your computer, the flash drive, the chip in the iPad, the OS that runs the Amazon Kindle, the chip that controls the Sony PlayStation, and the 3D sensor in the Xbox Kinect. Every year, American companies are shelling out more and more shekels to buy small Israeli startups. The latest example is Waze, an Israeli smartphone app that gives live traffic reports based on your location. It warns users about traffic jams, accidents, and even sitting police cars. In 2011, Waze made headlines by helping drivers navigate the LA traffic jam known as Carmageddon. 2 years later, Google bought the program for just under $1 billion, making it the most expensive app in history.
I think the key challenge for Israeli companies now is to go from startup nation to scale-up nation. We need to build bigger companies, not just sell them early to American multinationals, but to actually get them bigger, to get them into the sales process, and to create more jobs both here and in America and around the world.
So what gives Israel its technological edge? We asked some of the country's most prominent business leaders, and the answer is, there's no single answer.
Chutzpah is perhaps the most definitive Jewish word. Very, very hard to translate. Gall, unrelenting daring, this ability to try to do something which nobody else has done before, to say something which is a little bit out of place, to be in someone's face. That chutzpah is what allows us to actually break the boundaries and to break the rules and to go out of our comfort zone in order to create new things. There's a joke about what is the Jewish answer? It's a question, right? In other words, Jews will answer a question with a question.
That culture of challenging and debating and arguing, it's everywhere in Israel. Arguing is healthy because you get to better answers, you get to better results. And I think that is a key cultural attribute in Israel's economic success story and its economic miracle.
Our roots, our education, maybe even that it's coming from the Talmud, is always being skeptical and asking questions. And I believe this tradition, this culture, it's a part of our DNA.
Whether you call it the Socratic method or the Talmudic method, you choose it. That's a big part of how we learn and how we teach our kids. If you were looking for a single group to basically make your ideal pool of entrepreneurs, you couldn't look for a better group than immigrants. Immigrants make great entrepreneurs because they already did it in their own lives. They were the CEO of mylife.com. They took risk, they moved to a foreign country, they had to handle legal and facilities and HR to get jobs and banking and marketing, and they basically had to scale up. Innovation has a direct correlation to diversity. If you all think alike, and you all act alike, I'm sorry, it's not going to be a particularly creative place.
In Jewish life, parents always advocated to the kid that he has to learn and also that he has to venture if you want to succeed. I always say that the secret source of the Israeli high-tech is the Jewish mother who asked her son at the age of 7, after all what we have done for you, asking you for one Nobel Prize, is it really too much?
Yossi Vardi is known as the godfather of Israel's high-tech industry. He's invested in more than 80 internet startups, including a company started by his son.
Came with 3 of his friends. I gave them the money. I didn't have much of an idea what they are going to do. But still, I gave them the money. They created this unbelievable product, and the rest is history, as they say.
That unbelievable product was ICQ, the world's first instant messaging service. Less than a year later, America Online bought the company for $400 million.
Very hard to extract the DNA of success. You have to understand, if you venture, you cannot do only successes, because if you are trying to be involved in an area where there are only successes, you are not taking risks. So failure comes with the territory.
Failure is not a 4-letter word the last time I looked. Failure is part of the process. Not every team wins every game, but you gotta try, and if you fail, you gotta learn from your mistakes and then pick yourself up and do it right again.
Are the failure rates lower in Israel than they are in the rest of the world? And they're not. Israelis don't fail any less. The difference is they just keep trying.
People don't understand, for example, if you're presented the choice of investing in 2 entrepreneurs, one who's actually never tried it before, one who's tried and failed. Always take the guy who has tried and failed. Your statistical odds of getting a return on your investment are far better with that person.
If you're looking for the next generation of high-tech success stories in Israel, you won't find them in business school. In most job interviews here, the big question isn't where you went to college, but where you served in the military.
When I get a resume, the first thing I look at is what did this kid do in the Army? I don't look at the university, I look at the Army unit, because that's going to tell me a lot about who that person is.
In Israel, almost every single Israeli serves in the military. almost every single Israeli is put through this training in how to lead, how to manage, how to make very difficult decisions with very little information under enormous pressure. And these skills hardwire young people for being entrepreneurs and launching and running or helping to run startups.
We give the chance for every soldier to express himself and to say what he really believes without punishing him because his rank is a lower rank. So I have to tell you that sometimes listening to these officers, they raise a lot of stupid ideas in my point of view, 40, 50, 60%. But 20, 30, 40% are wonderful ideas.
Once they're out of the Army, soldiers take the same skills they've learned tracking terrorists and use them to make life safer for civilians. Israelis have developed everything from bomb-sniffing mice to software that prevents identity theft, to a scanner that lets you keep your shoes on during security checks at the airport. Many Israeli IT companies are founded by alumni of an elite military intelligence unit known as 8200, a highly secretive group that specializes in cyber warfare. Unit 8200 is believed to be the brains behind the Stuxnet virus that targeted Iran's nuclear facilities.
In my company, in the R&D team, 80% of the engineers are coming from Unit 8200.
Major General Aharon Farkash was the commander of Unit 8200 for 4 years. And when he retired from the Army, he used that experience to help design a security system known as SafeRise, a virtual doorman that uses both voice and facial recognition to protect offices and apartment buildings.
Welcome to FST.
Israelis are proud to say that many of their high-tech ideas come from their experience in the Army, an idea some say could also benefit American companies.
American businesses have a lot to learn with how Israel has integrated their military people when they're coming out of the military into the economy.
It's really got to be part, I think, of everybody's culture. And certainly the heroes who are coming back in America from Iraq and from Afghanistan, they need to be the first guys to get the jobs because they have actually taken leadership and led, and they're the kind of people who you want to hire.
Lessons for us all coming out of Israel. But here's another reason why you see such creativity in Israel. You go back to the Bible, and in the book of Exodus, God talks about putting His Spirit on individuals there and gifting them with all manner of wisdom and craftsmanship and skill and ability. And these, we have to remember, were slaves. They'd just come out of hundreds of years, 400 years in Egypt. And here, suddenly they're doing these amazing things in a very harsh environment in a desert. Well, the same thing is happening today in Israel. God is giving them wisdom, ingenuity, inventiveness, and it's absolutely wonderful to see.
Well, it's admirable, it's astonishing, it's been profitable. But up next, why Christians throughout the world should stand with the Jewish state. Israel is just a tiny country with a small population, and yet it's the center of so many news stories. So why is there so much attention focused on this one nation? As Sky, Trinity, and Christian explain, it all started with a covenant.
Have you ever wondered, what's the big deal about Israel?
What's the big deal about Israel?
What's the big deal about Israel? Why is this tiny country always in the news?
And why do other countries want to wipe it off the map?
Or maybe you've asked,
why have the Jews been so mistreated throughout history?
Even today, why is anti-Semitism growing around the world?
Or how about this? Why should we care?
To answer those questions, let's go back to the beginning.
God's entire plan of redemption began with the covenant.
a promise to one man, Abraham, through his son, Isaac, and his son, Jacob, aka Israel.
The promise included a specific piece of land, and the promise is everlasting. God always keeps his promises.
Over 400 years later, God made another covenant, this time with Moses.
If Israel followed God's law, they could take possession of and permanently occupy the promised land.
Even in our day, we've seen something no one thought was possible. In 1948, the Jewish people reestablished the nation of Israel. God always keeps his promises.
And he made another one, a third covenant, with King David. God said that David's kingdom would be established forever through the coming Messiah.
We know that future king to be Jesus. That's why Matthew called him Son of David.
There's coming a day when his promises to Abraham and David will be fulfilled together. This is made possible because of the new covenant.
This new promise was sealed with the blood of Christ Jesus. One day, Jesus will reign from Jerusalem.
Isaiah said this new kingdom would be the center of global rule. And Paul said when Jesus returns, all Israel will be saved. God always keeps his promises.
So, if you want to know the answers to those questions, God made a promise, and the enemy has done and will do everything in his power to destroy Israel and her people. That's why, as Christians, we need to stand in solidarity with Israel.
We need to love the Jewish people.
And we need to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Much more than just today's news story. There's a very big picture that's been unfolding for generations and that's fulfilling biblical prophecy.
Well, CBN is committed to helping the Jewish nation and its people. Recently, we met one survivor of the Holocaust and got her the supplies and medicines she desperately needed.
Elizabeth Tishman is one of about 200,000 Holocaust survivors living in Israel. She was only 11 years old when the horror of the Holocaust began to unfold in her native Russia. Nazis forced her neighbors into ghettos. To avoid capture, her family took refuge in a friend's basement. In the darkness, she witnessed terrible tragedies.
There was a little child with his mother, and he cried a lot. She suffocated him with her bare hands to keep us all from getting caught and killed.
When they had to abandon their hiding place, they were eventually forced to live in the ghetto.
Do you know what is it like to lay on straw when it is raining and you don't have a blanket to cover yourself? Or when a Nazi officer comes at night to search your house? It is a nightmare.
After 3 torturous years, news came that the war was finally over.
People ran into the streets shouting, "We are free!" We all cried and laughed and hugged each other. It was incredible.
Today, like many Holocaust survivors in Israel, Elizabeth lives in poverty.
When I first came here, I had only cucumbers, tomatoes, and bread and butter.
CBN Israel helps Holocaust survivors by taking groceries to them each month. Elizabeth says she looks forward to every visit.
I like when they come, and I like that they believe in God. If God led me through this life, and you have come to see me, that means that God has not forgotten me.
Recently, Elizabeth's gas stove started to leak. She didn't have the money to fix it and had no way to cook. So we took her shopping and bought her a new stove.
I want to thank you so much for your help. May God bless you and give you health and happiness.
And we want to be a blessing to Israel. We want to be a blessing to those in need. And whether they're Jewish or Christian or Muslim or none of the above, we want to help them. If you want to be a part of that, there's an easy way you can do it. You can give to CBN Israel, and your gift will go to the CBN news reporting that's coming out of Jerusalem, to these wonderful documentaries, and then to help people, and help people very tangibly through our humanitarian arm there. So if you want to do that, call us, 1-800-700-7000, and just say, I want to give to CBN Israel. There's an address on the screen, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463, or you can call us, or you can go to cbn.com And there on the giving page, there's a way you can designate your gift to Israel. And I'll remind you, May 23, we've got this wonderful film out. It will educate you on the Six-Day War, what happened, who were involved. It'll be eyewitness accounts directly from the paratroopers who were there, and it will tell you how to look at current events, and it'll be a wonderful lesson for you so you understand the history and therefore understand the headlines in today's newspapers. You can do it. All you have to do is go to our wonderful website, In Our Hands, 1967.com. There's a place where you can find out where the theater is in your neighborhood, how you can get tickets, how you can get group tickets. So do it now, In Our Hands, 1967.com. Well, coming up, we'll be back to answer your email questions right after this.
Well, we'd like to take a few minutes to answer some of the email questions you've sent in. So we'll bring it on with Patrick's question. What happens if a person forgets to confess a certain sin of the past? Does God still love and accept them?
Of course he does, Patrick. He still loves people. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And the Apostle Paul said, this is love, that while we're in the middle of sin. Now, if you go look at the Torah and you start looking at the 613 commandments there, start realizing how many sins, how many violations you have committed over your life. When you look at what Jesus says, if you just hate your brother, if you just express hatred, that you have sinned. You look at these things and you go, who can be saved? And the disciples of Jesus asked the same question. Who can be saved? Well, the wonderful news is his blood covers all sin. He takes care of all of it. And so either the sins you remember and confess, or the sins that you have forgotten about, or the sins that you've committed, you didn't even know you were committing a sin. He covers all of this. And so just confess that he is Lord. Confess that he is the Messiah. Confess that he is your Savior, and you will be saved.
Gordon Frank has a question that many have asked over the years. Why does it seem like God intervenes or sends angels to stop something bad from happening in some cases, but in other cases he doesn't? Is it just luck, or does God pick and choose situations to get involved in?
Frank, that question is as old as the book of Job, and I would encourage you to go read that. It's one of the wisdom books of the Bible. And in my lifetime, it's the times where things weren't going well, and the times where it seemed like I was pressed in, hedged in. Those were the times where I learned more about God. So there is a fellowship that you have with him in suffering. Why that is, I don't know, but it happens. And so take advantage of it when you're going through it. But don't blame God for your problems. Realize that he is always the answer. He is the solution to every human need.
Grace asks, what's a good thing to tell non-believers when they say they don't believe that God wrote the Bible through his prophets and disciples? Because there are different translations.
There are different translations of all the classics. Just try to translate some of your own writings, say into Spanish or French, and you'll realize, well, there are multiple interpretations, multiple different words and expressions. It doesn't mean they're different. And here's something that you need to tell your friends. All four of the Gospels agree on this one thing. Jesus was raised from the dead. That is incredible. And that is what our faith is based on, that he died and he rose again. It's not based on some nuance of language. It's based on that fact. We leave you with these words from Psalm 29. The Lord will give strength to his people. The Lord will bless his people with peace. Well, God bless you. We'll see you again.